We did foster care for approximately 4 years, and off and on we had roughly 14 kids that came and stayed in our home, anywhere from a month to, I think the longest I had a brother and sister, I had them for 2 years before they went back home. Well, when we first started doing foster care, we did teenage boys. That was interesting. Very sad. They had, obviously gone through a lot of trauma. They were older. They knew they were not going home to their parents, and so they had a lot of issues. Some of them concerning men, some of them concerning women. And so we did that for probably a year. And then after a year, we decided to do sibling groups because I felt like it was really important that if you were going to be taken away from the only people you had ever known, your parents who are supposed to love you and take care of you, the only thing you really had in this world is each other. So it became important. So we took a sibling group, a 4-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy, and we had them the longest for 2 years, and then they went home to their mom. And then we had another sibling group of a brother and 2 sisters, and they went home to their mom after about 14 months. And we had mostly sibling groups come in and out through that period of time. We usually had at least 4 foster kids at any one time. A lot of times we had 5. And then at the end of our foster care experience, we did teenage girls. And again, they were interesting. The teenage girls, very sad, very crushed. And so that's what we ended with, was the teenage girls. We did them for about a year. When you first get a foster child, you have a certain period of time, I think it's like a month, to take them to the doctor, get them checked out, make sure that they're okay, get them a physical of some sorts, documentation, that they don't have any bruises or whatever, or problems where they came from. And so the doctor said that the girl, everything was good except she had lice. And I had never dealt with lice before. I didn't even know what it looked like. So I said, no, she doesn't. And she said, yeah, she does. I'll show you. And so she parted her hair. And here was this biggest looking spider-like thing that I'd ever seen in my life. And it freaked me out. And so that was a very horrible experience. And so I went home and tried to take care of that by buying like Rid or whatever. And she ended up having it. My other 2, who were 4 that had turned 5, they were all in kindergarten together, they had it. And then her 8-year-old brother had it. So yeah, that was a very bad experience. And then after her and her brother left, like 3 or 4 months later, I got the sibling group, the brother and 2 sisters, and they ended up getting lice, and so did my 2 littles. And yeah, I've picked hair for 7 hours one day. It was really interesting. Pretty much every kid that came into my house after that, I instructed the social worker that they better be checked for lice. The positive experiences, I would have to say it was probably the best time of my life. I was able to make it my job to be their mom. And so I drove them to school every day. I was able to work in their classrooms. There were some really great teachers who really helped out some of the kids that I was blessed with being a mom for even a minute for them. And it was, we just got in a routine and did homework and had parties for them for their birthdays. And I don't know if they'd ever had birthday parties before. And just making them feel special and doing fun stuff with them and acting like a family. I remember one time I had a biological parent tell me how much she appreciated the fact that she knew I loved her kids. She could tell I loved her kids, but I knew they weren't mine. they were loaned to me for a time in a season. And like I said, the best thing in the world to me was just being a family and showing them love, unconditional love. Thoroughly enjoyed the whole experience as a whole. Sure, there were some hard moments. There were some really heart-wrenching moments. But by and large, I would say the whole experience was a very positive thing. Well, when I first started doing foster care, my only child at that time was 3. And so he fit in fine. Like I said, we got 2 other girls that were his age, one of them for 2 years. So it's kind of like they were brother and sister. And they did really well with it. And they went all through kindergarten together and part of first grade, actually. And then she went home. But so Bo was fine. That's my oldest son. When I did the teenage girls, I actually had 2 more children of my own, and the girls liked we called them the little people because they were young, 2 and 3, 1 and 2, that kind of thing, and so they liked watching them. And then my oldest son at that point was probably 13, and I think there were moments he probably resented that we were doing foster care again, just because of some of the problems. And then so you end up dealing with problem issues, and and so he probably felt left out, maybe a little isolated there for a while. I vaguely remember him saying something about that. It's been a long time. But yeah, so by and large, my biological children always seem to do well with it. I would definitely decide, if you go with the county, they pay less, but they do not watch over your shoulder as closely as the private company. So it depends on what you want. The county is supposed to come out once a month, the social worker, just to check on everybody, make sure everything's going okay, make sure you're still in compliance with all the rules and codes and whatever it is you have to have in place before you even get children. Because you have training hours as well that you have to keep up on. And they offer classes through the county, or the private agencies offer classes so you can get those training hours. And so the county pays less, but they're in your business less. And then the private companies pay more, but they come out weekly, and they are religious about that. The social worker comes out weekly to see you, to see the kids. Kind of in a way, it's, I don't know, I liked going with the private agency more because I felt like there was more support. I would say check out both options because I've known people who started private and gone to the county, and vice versa. Like I did, start with county, go with private. There are kids who are very traumatized, beyond traumatized, who need possibly beyond the scope that you can give them. Get somebody in your home and you have absolutely no idea what they've gone through. And if you have your own biological children, they come first. And that's what it is. Your bio children come first. And so that is really why we stopped altogether foster care, is we just needed to focus on our own family. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of patience, and in my life a lot of prayer, to be able to minister to these kids, because they're beyond broken, they're crushed. And people who either are doing it for the money and don't care, which that is one of the saddest things in the world, I think, because they're adding more damage and more pain on to these children. They need help, and they need somebody who's going to have mercy and grace and be willing to do the things that will help this child get better, not just gloss over what they've gone through, because it's traumatic at whatever level. It's traumatic. I remember when we took this 10-year-old kid and his 4-year-old sister. I'll just never forget this. Always makes me cry. We had him for 2 years. And so he was 12 by the time he went home. And by the time he was going to go home, he was shoplifting. I couldn't even let him walk in the store without holding on to the cart. I had to make him hold on to the cart if he went shopping with me, because he was, shoplifting. And then he was, coming home with hickeys on his neck. He was in middle school. He hid cigarettes outside that we found. I mean, this kid was acting out like huge, and he had been in my home for like almost 2 years. And we went to see his social worker, and we were talking about possibly him going home to be with his mom, because she had done all the classes that she was supposed to. She had taken care of all her, police matters that she needed to deal with, and they were going to let these kids go home. And so he was telling this boy, you're jeopardizing going home, because I had to fight with him every day to go to school. And they knew that if he went home with his bio mother, that she probably was not going to be able to stand up to him and make him go to school every day. And he was 12. He needed to be in school. So he's just laying it out, the social worker, and this kid just like, in this voice I'll just never forget, just screamed, I have a hole in my heart. I miss my mom. I want to go home and be with her. And it's just like, oh my God, this is just a wounded, crushed child. And even though we kept him safe for 2 years, and as safe as we could, as safe as he would let us, it was just beyond our scope in a lot of ways. And so you can never be too prepared, but you better be prepared, because these kids they're wounded, they're hurting, and they're going to lash out. They just are. Read up as much as you can. Talk to as many foster parents as you can. Research whether you want to do county or private. And I hope you're a praying person, because sometimes you're going to need to. And your family unit had better be solid before you invite other people into your home, because it adds a lot of stress. But at the end, for me, like I said, it was just a really wonderful experience in a lot of ways.